Welcome to the Plant-Centered and Thriving podcast. I'm your host, Ashley Kitchens. Welcome to the show. My name is Ashley.
And I'm Katie.
And we have a very special episode for you today because you get both of us.
Oh gosh.
We are thrilled to be here with you today. Thank you so much for taking the time to tune in. Today, we're going to cover common questions that we are asked on a plant-based diet. So common questions when it comes to plant-based eating, and then common listener questions as well that we've gotten just over the past couple months that we wanted to share and answer with you. But we also have some other exciting news that we want to talk about. Katie, do you want to give a little sneak peek on what's coming up?
I know. I am just feeling so excited about what's coming down the pipeline. And I think today's a good day to talk about it because it's our 2-year podcast anniversary. Yay!
Yay! Isn't it wild? If you've been here from the beginning, thank you so much. If you're just tuning in, thank you so much. Like, we cannot tell you enough how much we appreciate and value you listening to our episodes. So you mean the world to us.
Yes, so it's been a great, very rewarding experience. So like I just feel super jazzed lately because we've had so much engagement. Especially we're coming off Mitch Gill's episode. I know Mitch is listening, so he said I had a goofy laugh, so I just wanted to give him a shout out because he gave me my first shout out, so I felt very special. But everybody's just been raving about that episode. So we have so many good guests coming too. So like podcast is exciting, and then what we're working on is exciting. So we have a couple things in the pipeline. Those of you who've been around, we have dabbled in some digital content, and so we wanted to really concentrate on those of you who are just starting your transition and helping you do that as efficiently as possible. So we have a new course coming out, Plant-Based in 30 Days. Yay!
We have been putting so much work into this course over the past few months. This one is specifically geared towards people who are just starting their plant-based journey. And that's why we called it Plant-Based in 30 Days. If you're looking to go plant-based, we basically gave you a step-by-step guide on how to do it in 30 days. Now, of course, you do not have to follow that timeline specifically. We give you a lot of flexibility there, but we are just working to help you make this journey as easy as possible. We want it to be easy, we want it to be joyful, and we want it to be freeing and liberating because we want you to really enjoy your plant-based journey and to not have to feel overwhelmed or stressed out about, well, what supplements do I need to take? How should I communicate with my doctor? What do I do when I go out to eat or over to a friend's house? So we answered all of those questions for you in this course. And actually, one of the bonus modules is kind of what we're using today for our episode in talking about common questions that we are asked from people when we go plant-based. Because Katie and I often talk, plant-based eating, it's really not that challenging, but other people make it challenging. And so we just want to make that, we wanted to give you a special episode talking about how to answer common questions because that can be a little daunting sometimes.
Yeah, I think that's one of the most common questions that we get is like, if I live in a vacuum, I'm good, but as soon as I make contact with the outside world, conflict arises. It's amazing how that happens.
Yep, it really is. Yes.
Yeah, but we're super excited about this course. So yeah, Ashley mentioned we have bonus modules. We have the standard course. You can throw them together. There's some other exciting things. So we got something, a little bit of something for everybody, every budget. So I'm super pumped.
Yeah, yep. And we also have a 1-month meal plan that you'll be able to add on to that course if you purchase it for a discounted price. But we also have today, y'all are actually the first to know if you're listening to this on Monday, we have our 1-month meal plan now available. So we're announcing it to you first, and then eventually later this week, our newsletter will find out, Instagram will find out, all those people, but we figured, you are our valued listener, so we would let you know first. But that link is in the show notes if you want to check it out and kind of just see if it would be a good fit for you. It's basically it is a meal prepping meal plan. So, Katie and I are both into really just setting ourselves up for success for the week. It makes our lives so much easier. So we're all about planning ahead. We're all about prepping, whether it's, one recipe for the week or one recipe multiple different ways throughout the week. And so that's what this meal plan is all about. It's 30 days. You don't have to do anything. And there are recipes for each week that you can create for your week multiple different ways. So there's a lot of ways to add variety to your diet. It's whole food plant-based friendly, it's gluten-free friendly, and there's like calendars for each week. There's a grocery list. There's like a weekends hack page. There's a snack list. Like all these things. It's like over 30 some pages. It's it's a lot. So there's a lot in there for you to kind of just help kick off really the next month if you don't want to think about your meals for the next month.
We have to go big. We can't just
We
throw
do.
something together. We have to go big, big, big. Lots of fancy schmancy stuff. And actually, is it okay if I shout out my favorite recipe? You know which one it is.
Yes. Yep.
So those of you who have been listening, you know that I was a client with Ashley before I joined the team, and she helped me with a meal plan similar to this. And we have one of those staple recipes because I could not have this meal plan without it. So breakfast, chia pudding, peanut butter and jelly. Every morning I have it. I think of Ashley, I think of my journey, and I'm just like, I still love it to this day, like 4 years later. So there are so many recipes like that, so many good ones.
Yep, that is definitely one of my favorites. That breakfast recipe, and then there's a muesli recipe that is so easy. You can throw everything together in less than 10 minutes, and then you're good to go. It serves 5+ serve. It's easy. It's amazing. There's so many different ways that you can do it. So just like the chia seed pudding, you can make it PB&J, which is also my favorite style too. But then we threw in some other ideas on how to make it as well. So lots of
Yeah.
good stuff. I'm just so excited for it. So
We could go on and on about it, but you guys will just have to wait and see because it's so good.
yes, yep. Well, so we were just coming off Mother's Day. Katie, how was your journey? Because I know that you took a little trip.
Yeah, so my family hails from the eastern part of North Carolina, so I got to see all my family, my grandma, obviously my mom and my sisters are amazing moms too, so I got to see them. So it was a family affair. How,
Yes.
how about you? You didn't get to see Becky. She lives far away, huh?
She does. She lives about 10 hours away. So I called her, I talked to her, I sent her flowers, all that, and wished her a
Oh,
happy Mother's Day. She was hanging out with her mom, which was really nice.
oh,
They
good.
actually live down the road from each other. So yeah, that was really special, I know, for her.
Shout out to Becky.
Well, we hope you all had a wonderful weekend. Katie, do you want to go ahead and jump into some of these questions?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. Let's start first on really setting the tone for questions and what helps. So, especially if you're new to plant-based eating, and we talk about this in the course, is it's really helpful to do your own research, especially when you are newer to plant-based eating. And we give you those tools and like the go-to resources to find evidence-based nutrition information because as you know, there is a lot of information online and it can be overwhelming, daunting to sift through all of it and knowing what to believe and what not. So, doing your own research and having that knowledge is helpful because people are going to ask you questions, and we'll talk about how to recognize what kind of questions they're asking and if you, quote, should respond. But really, you learn as you go. So, as you're going throughout your plant based journey, there is something to be said about learning and experiencing transitioning to plant based, eating plant based, and that also helps you respond to questions. And then there are some common questions out there, which we're going to cover today. And it's always kind of helpful to know, okay, how do I want to respond to this? And maybe kind of just seeing a pattern of questions that you get asked and just trying to understand, okay, well, how do I want to respond to this? Because, of course, there are many ways to respond to these common questions. But there are some things that I want you to keep in mind when questions are coming at you. And there's three things in particular. One thing that I want you to think about is this the right time or place to get into a discussion? Are you in the right frame of mind to get into this discussion? That's the second one. So is it the right time or place? And am I or are you in a good frame of mind to discuss this topic or to discuss this question? Are you stressed out? Are you overwhelmed? Do you not know how to answer? Maybe you need to pass? Or is it something that you do want to get into? So keep those two things in mind. And then the third thing I want you to keep in mind, and we talk about this pretty often, is when a person is asking you questions, ask yourself, are they coming from a place of genuine curiosity? Do they really want to know, where do you get your protein or why you're plant-based? Or are they coming from a place of judgment where maybe this discussion could take a turn where it's not great for both parties involved? So keep those in mind as well. And the main thing to remember too is don't take it personally. People you can't control other people's emotions, you can't control their reactions. So really it's just up to you to do the best that you can when you are faced with questions. And trust me when I say I have messed up answers to questions all of the time. That's just kind of the process. Someone asks you a question, you're like, I don't know, like, or you never heard the question before. You're like, I don't know how to answer that. So sometimes it might just take like, hey, let me actually look into that and I'll get back to you. But we'll talk more about that in a little bit.
I'm going to steal something from one of my favorite podcasters, Dr. Emily Morse. She has a great lifestyle podcast, and she has a really easy way to think of it. And this works for like your personal relationships, professional relationships. The 3 T's: turf, timing, and tone. So you want, if someone's got an attitude, that's not the right time to, or if you have an attitude.
Which happens.
Sometimes I have an attitude. So that's not the right time to do it. Timing, make sure everybody's in a good mood, make sure no one's tired, no one's grumpy. And then turf. So make sure you're on, neutral turf. You're not, in the middle of working, or you're not, at your best friend's house. You're at a neutral place where everybody feels safe. So I think those are good. I have used those so many times when it comes to kind of having sit down conversations. So I love that as kind of some tips.
Yep, I love that too. I think that's a great way to keep that in mind with the 3 T's.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the most common question, which is, where do you get your protein? So, of course, there are multiple ways to answer this, and it's best to find out, okay, well, what's the best way that I can answer this? And we'll give you some options. So one, you could say something kind of sarcastically of, well, I get my protein where your protein gets their protein from plants. You could say something that's maybe more educational. If someone truly wants to know or is genuinely curious, you could say, well, despite what you may have heard, protein isn't a concern for plant eaters. And you don't have to have meat or meat in your diet to get an adequate amount of protein. And then for some people, it might be helpful for you to show them a picture of your food, or for you to answer just very simply, well, I get my protein from legumes, nuts, seeds, whole grains, fruits, and vegetables. All plants have protein, that type of thing. So there are a lot of ways to answer that question. It's kind of just up to you to figure out where the person is coming from and how you want to best respond and kind of what fits your personality.
I love that idea of showing them the pictures. I like that kind of takes the pressure off of the words.
Yeah, that was actually one of the main reasons I started my Instagram. Was I was getting so many questions of like, well, what do you even eat? And it's like, oh, here, let me show you. I'll just take some pictures of my food, throw them on Instagram, and it's kind of an easy way to show that, hey, I'm actually getting variety, a lot of color, and it looks delicious.
Yeah, that's how we get them. That's how we hook them, guys.
So another thing, speaking of showing them pictures, is another common question is it hard to be vegan or plant-based, or even, well, what do you even eat as a plant-based eater? So again, there's multiple ways to answer this question. One of the common ways I respond to this is, well, you know what? It's actually much easier than you'd think. I thought it was going to be really challenging too, but I find that I eat much more variety eating plant-based. I'm shopping in different parts of the grocery store, and I'm enjoying just foods that maybe I didn't enjoy growing up. So you can kind of just say, hey, it's much easier than you would think. It's not as challenging. And then also you could show them pictures as well.
Yeah, I love that. I love, being positive, and, certainly, when the change when the change first happens, like we're turning into the Hulk.
Right.
We are.
I mean, kind of.
Green.
Yep.
But when that happens, it's just like any other, habit change, or you want to incorporate something different. There's a little bit of discomfort when it first starts, but gosh, Ashley, I'm sure you feel the same. Like, I cannot imagine going back. Like, no. Once I'm here, it's like, how do you go back? Like, that would be hard.
Yes.
That would be super hard, because like you said, like, I just feel like I am having so much more variety. Everything agrees with me so much better. So, that makes whatever hard come up, like, it makes you forget about it pretty easily.
Yes.
And speaking of the course, if you think it's going to be hard, let us help you.
We can definitely do that for you. It's funny too, Katie. So I was interviewing someone last week for the podcast, which her episode will air in a little while. She's a brand new vegan. And she was talking about those same struggles. She's like, you know what? It actually hasn't been that hard to switch over to plant-based eating. It's more of the pushback that I get from other people or the questions that maybe I wasn't expecting that I've been kind of challenged with. And I was like, yes, we can all relate to that.
Yeah.
So, another common question that we wanted to clarify, and this is a big misconception, is well, isn't it expensive to be vegan or isn't it expensive to be plant based? And I know a lot of you know listening that there's actually a lot of studies to back that eating a predominantly plant based diet can actually be much more affordable than eating the standard American diet. You can save up to like, I think there's one study that said $720 a year, one that said it was like around $20 or $23 a week, which of course those numbers don't add up. There are different studies, but there are definitely ways to make it incredibly affordable. So, how you can answer this is well, hey, like with any way of eating, it can be expensive depending on what you buy. And then you could also say once you learn the basics of plant based eating, your grocery bill can be lower than eating the standard American diet while also consisting of high quality foods. And I think it's always helpful to relate, to at least try or pretend, whatever you have to do, to kind of relate to that person because I know I used to think eating vegan was expensive. And so when someone asks that question, you're like, you know what? I used to think that too. But then you can kind of say, oh, but I'm actually saving $5 a week or $20 a week on my grocery bill, and I can't believe it. So it's actually much more affordable than I thought.
Absolutely. And, especially now with like social media and everything is in the media and like you're reading like little clickbait and headlines, the plant-based foods that are in the headlines are, Beyond Meat and Daya and all of these kind of what we call transition foods, which are all fantastic. They certainly hold their place. But if I'm eating nothing but, and this is again, if you're standard American diet or plant based, if I'm eating nothing but this kind of like highly processed foods and that's it, then yeah, my grocery bill is going to be high.
Yes.
But for us, the majority of what we eat is, fruits, vegetables, grains, nuts, seeds. That's peasant food, guys. That's potatoes, that's beans, that stuff is on the cheap, cheap. Hopefully it stays like that when
Right.
we're in crazy times, but it's definitely better than, just having nothing but this kind of highly processed food. So like Ashley and I, we certainly eat that in our diet, but it's not every meal.
Mm-hmm.
It's sprinkled in when
Yep.
we can. And so no one's going to meet any more budget friendly gal than me. Uh, and so I can attest to it. My grocery bill cut in half, if not more, when I went plant based. And so you got to plan a little bit, but
Yep.
like I said, that hard gets so much easier when you start to find recipes that you love and get those skills under your belt and then start tasting the deliciousness.
Well, it's true. And you also learn how to almost optimize your meal planning and your grocery shopping so that it is more affordable if that's something that you're wanting to do. I know when Nick and I were first together, first married, and I was going plant based, we had to be incredibly diligent with any way that we were eating. But as we transitioned to plant based, we're like, wow, we're actually saving more money than we ever anticipated. So I know Nick was
Mm-hmm.
like all for that because he's definitely the budget person in our household.
Hi, Andy.
Yeah. So, another common question or another maybe common comment is I could never go plant based. I like meat too much, or I love bacon too much, or I love cheese too much. Now, if you're familiar with Dr. Doug Lisle, who is like a plant based psychologist, his response to this question, I'll never forget it because I've seen him speak a couple times. His response is, yeah, you probably can't. And like literally, that's it. I know.
Sassy.
Oh, he is so sassy. But it's hilarious because, when you tell yourself, oh, I can never do this or I can't do that, then yeah, you start believing that you never could do it. And there are, again, multiple ways to respond to this. Honestly, when someone tells me that, I'm just like, that's fair. Whatever. That's you. That's you. That's great. But another way, again, and this is relating to the person talking to you, you could say, you know what? I used to think that too. And then I tried some of the new vegan meats on the market and I was really impressed. Or I tried this new vegan recipe and I couldn't believe how delicious it was. I didn't even miss the meat. And hey, maybe you would like them too. You want to give you one? Or, try a recipe, or you may try give you this product recommendation. So again, relating to the person asking, because I'm sure a lot of people who have gone plant-based or vegan, like myself, I once thought I could never live without dairy butter or eggs or cheese. And here we are today, 10 plus years later.
This is why I love Ashley so much. Her like sunshininess is so infectious. So, when the course does come out, she is right there with you, leading you through this course. And so, I can be a little bit sassy too. So I love that. Like, I thought the same thing, but now things have changed. So I love that, Ashley. I think that's such good advice. Because
Yeah.
it really puts a positive spin when someone's kind of throwing you some negativity instead of throwing it back like maybe I would. You give them your sunshine back and turn it into a positive. So I'm sure that keeps people on their toes and thinking like, oh, okay,
Yeah.
and that's really what it's all about, right? We want to try to pull them to the dark side. We don't want to shun them.
Yes. Right. And that contagious enthusiasm can be really helpful, but also the sass. There's always a place for that. If we could just be a
Yeah.
bit more like Katie and Dr. Doug Lyle.
Yeah.
So this is another common question is, well, haven't we evolved to eat meat? And I know in the pleasure trap, they talk about this a fair amount about evolution and how we eat or how we ate. So a common response to this could be, well, the question isn't whether humans have in the past relied on meat to survive, because I'm sure there were that did. The question is whether there's any clear benefit to eating meat today. Because we can get everything we need from plants, which is better for our health, it's better for the planet, and it's better for the animals. So that's, I think, I remember reading that response somewhere and I was like, wow, that's pretty profound because I like that it challenged, well, the question isn't whether we evolved to eat meat, it's whether there's any benefit to eating meat now. I mean, look at our grocery stores. There's so much abundance in our stores that it just really isn't necessary. So,
Yeah. You know what that reminds me of, Ashley? It reminds me of
what?
two podcast episodes, or no, it wasn't a podcast episode. We're gonna have to do one because we're gonna have Dr. Lyle on there. But we just did
I would love to.
our book club. Shout out Plant Sitter Book Club at the end last Friday of every month. We just did the Pleasure Trap, so I highly recommend that. And they really highlight how industrialized food has really concentrated on, again, introducing processed food, fast food, and like the abundance of meat in our diet, which was not, common in the last, up until like the last couple hundred years. So
Yeah.
like back in the day, and this reminds me of our other podcast with, oh gosh, Ashley, who is our Dr. Herb guy?
Oh,
Dr.
Dr. Rawls?
Dr. Rawls.
Yeah.
Uh, we'll link that in the show notes. I loved him. He talked about herbs and the benefits to food herbs and medicinal herbs, and he talks a lot about how our kind of primal ancestries. They ate a lot of leaves and roots and stuff like that. There wasn't a ton of meat, and
Yeah.
they were thriving on that stuff. So it was fascinating, those two things. So we'll link both of those in the show notes,
Yeah. Yeah.
because we got to turn those arguments on their heads. Like,
Uh-uh.
that's where the sass comes out.
All right, so let's move on to vitamin B12 because that is also another common question is, well, if you have to supplement with vitamin B12, it doesn't seem like you should be plant-based. So a common response to this is if one supplement is the only thing standing between me and eating plant-based, then I'm going to choose plants. And then another response to this, which I'm not sure if a lot of people are familiar with this, they don't really think about it, is that most farm animals are actually supplemented with vitamin B12. So it's actually more efficient to cut out the middleman and just go straight to the source. Because of our modern farming practices, our produce is heavily sanitized. We're just not able to get vitamin B12 like we used to when we were just like eating fruits, vegetables off the tree, off, out of the ground, drinking water from streams. So we're not able to get that bacteria like we used to, because that's what vitamin B12, that's where it comes from. So a lot of great responses there.
Yeah, I think that's one of those things that people really like don't have a good grasp of what that actually means in terms of like plant-based versus standard American diet. You know, we're all, deficient in America because of how
Yes.
we, how our food system operates. So you can't get away from it no matter how you eat, guys. So if you think the standard American diet is giving you everything that you need, maybe you're some of those lucky few, but get your lab works done. You're probably, most of us are struggling with, lack of fiber, omega 3s, B12, vitamin D, iron. Did I already say iron?
Yep.
So
Yep.
all of those things, most of us are struggling with because we just, our food practices have changed. So,
Yeah.
we're in that time in history where now we have to adapt with supplementation. Sometimes
Yep.
we just cannot get it, no matter how hard we plan. We just can't get it from our food.
Yes, right. And that's something that we talk about in the course too, is supplementing a well-planned plant-based diet. So that's really important too, is having that food first foundation and then supplementing from there. And a lot of the nutrients that Katie mentioned that people are deficient in has nothing to do with being plant-based whatsoever. And except for vitamin B12, obviously. And so I think that's something that's really helpful to know too, is that just because you're plant-based or vegan, that does not increase your risk of becoming anemic. That does not increase your risk of a vitamin D deficiency. You're going to eat way more fiber and probably more omega 3s potentially, depending on your diet. So there's a lot of great things there. But a well planned plant based diet is what we start with. That's the foundation. And then we build off that depending on what your body needs.
Yeah.
Okay.
But Ashley and I encourage that that you plan no matter how you eat,
Yep.
that you're planning not just for taste but for nutrition as well.
Mm-hmm. Yep. That's a good little intuitive eating combo. All right. So last main questions, and we'll go to some listener questions, is maybe you're at a friend's house or maybe you're home for the holidays and someone asks you, well, can't you just have a bite? Or can't you just have meat this once? Or come on, just have a cheat day. It's fine. So a common response to this could be, well, I could. So I could eat the meat or I could eat the dairy, but I really don't want to. Thank you very much. But that want piece is what's so important. It's not that you can or can't eat those foods. I mean, anyone can eat any foods, even foods you're allergic to. You can eat technically, but you don't want to because you know the damage that's going to have on your body, and that goes for eating plant-based. It's a little bit different, obviously, but it's a want. It's not a I can't. And that's the same with like the cheat day example, explaining that, well, you know what, I'm not on a diet or following any strict rules. This is something that I want to do. I don't have the desire to eat that or to eat meat or to eat the cheese plate, and explaining that. In fact, I can't remember if I mentioned this on the podcast. Someone had asked me recently, they're like, do you ever just want to cheat? And I'm like, cheat doesn't even like cross my mind. I have no desire to eat any of those foods, and I don't feel restricted at all. In fact, many people who go plant-based, and maybe you can relate to this, a lot of us feel like just freedom from going plant-based because maybe we're recovering from a health ailment or we just physically feel better or we're sleeping better. And so there's this feeling of freedom versus feeling restricted, which is really a powerful place to be.
It's like the cheat days don't exist anymore. Like, you're like some diets you're like, "Oh, I just got to make it to Sunday, my cheat day, and then I
Yep.
can, then I can just gorge myself and then I can get through the next, 7 days." But it's like, when you have that food freedom, you take that away. You can eat whatever you want when you give yourself permission to decide that I choose to eat what I choose to eat.
Yeah.
And it's so liberating, and especially for those of us who have lived under the strong arm of diet culture for decades. Speaking from personal experience, it's such a nice feeling.
Yeah. Yep. It really is. So, Katie, let's go to some listener questions, which we kind of compiled and not rewrote, but like just adjusted the wording a little bit. So, let's start. We're going to go through three of those and answer those for you.
Yeah, so it's something that we're starting where, and we have a link, and we're including a link with every show notes. So we want to hear from you guys. We want to hear feedback. We want to hear what guests you want to hear, or what guests you want to see on. But also we want to see, what can we help you with? What are you struggling with? What can we answer for you? What other digital content can we provide for you? So anything, we have a form that you can just click on, super, super duper easy. That is just a Google form that you can fill out and let us know, because we want to hear from you. We want to engage with you. We stress this on the podcast as well as on social media, is why don't we talk about what do I eat in a day? So very popular on social media. It's like, sometimes it's just influencers, sometimes it's even dietitians or nutritionists where they're like, or a lot of fitness people, like, this is what I eat in a day. And so we don't like that very much. We like to say, we like to give you guys examples of what we prepare for ourselves in terms of, like, meal by meal. But Ashley, why don't we like that
Mm.
process?
So the one thing that I have found is, and this is just from other people kind of sharing how they feel when they watch those, or from what I've read from like professionals recommending that people don't do it, is because it can make someone feel bad about first the current way that they're eating. And it can, just because someone is eating a certain way in a day and looks a certain way, doesn't mean that if you eat that way, you are going to look that way. And so it can be a little confusing watching that, like, oh, if I eat this way, then I'm going to look like this person. But that really isn't the case. And we all have different needs, and we all have access to different types of food. So the way one person might be eating, you may not have access to some of those foods. You may not even like some of those foods. And so, as fun and inspirational as they can be sometimes, it can actually do more harm than good, and feeling like you have to kind of follow these rigid rules that this person is. To quote, like, look a certain way.
Especially with social media, it's very image driven. So if I rely on those images, so like, let's say this person is very fit, they're very skinny, and so we take that as healthy, and so therefore whatever they eat is causing them to be healthy, and so that's what I should do for my body. And so that is a very slippery slope where we are equating thinness with health.
Yep.
And you have no idea what is going on internally with them. And so I think that can be really, really dangerous. And then it, especially when it comes to, like, where they're like literally sitting down and showing you their plate. I've seen like very little tiny little portions. And so that gets into, okay, well, they're having one little piece of fish, or they're just having broccoli, or, and so that's what my portion size should be. And that's also a slippery slope. So everybody
Yeah.
knows, actually, she's like hitting the gym, right? So she's got to work on those traps. Oh gosh, guys, I give her such a hard time.
You're
Uh,
hilarious.
but she's got to feed those traps, right? So her portion size may be different than yours, and
Yeah.
that's okay, because she needs to, fuel her body for her activity level. So I think that's another thing that gets a little bit slippery when it comes to, what I eat in a day, because I think it just has this underlying tone of like, this is what I eat, so this is therefore what you should eat.
Yeah. Yep. And to be honest, posting even just my meals on social media every once in a while just for inspiration ish, I will get comments of like, wow, I would be so hungry after eating that. That's not very much. Or I can't believe you eat that much. That's so much food. And
She gets both. That is so funny that you get both.
yep. And
You can't win, guys.
yeah, the thing is, it's so dependent on the day. How I eat is dependent on my body and what it needs. And so it's hard when you're looking at someone else, you're like, wow, they eat so much, or wow, they're not hardly eating at all. Again, it's highly dependent on you and what your body needs. And so that's really important to keep that in mind as well. And you don't know how that person's day is going. Like you said, how much they're eating beforehand. There's a lot of variables and factors involved that we just don't know, because Instagram is just a highlight reel.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Mm.
But yeah, I think that's a good point for Ashley. Especially for Ashley's Instagram. When we are highlighting a meal, it's just that. It's just to give ideas on what you guys can make. It's not saying this is what you should have every day, or this is what you
Yeah.
should have to be healthy. Oh, I know what I was going to say. So another thing is that we're completely forgetting about actually is taste, right? So I've had clients come to me and they're like so worried, and we may have mentioned this on the podcast before. They're like, "I know you're going to make me eat kale, and I really don't want to, but I'm ready
Oh,
now. I'm ready to eat it." I'm like, "You do not have to eat kale if you don't want to eat kale."
no.
Uh, so that totally takes out, the taste factor
Yep.
that, we're equating like, oh, in order to be healthy, I have to drink kale every morning, and that's just not the case.
Yes.
So, we want you guys to look forward to what you're eating as well.
Yeah.
That's
And
very
that's
important.
that's that's part of the reason our meal plan is so flexible too, is like you do not have to follow it exactly as is. We leave so much room for flexibility. In fact, as we were writing, I'm like, is this too much room? But I feel like there's a good enough foundation for people who want to follow things exactly, and then a ton of flexibility for people who want to be fluid and do what they want. So a lot of the best of both worlds.
Oh, it's so good. I can't wait. I can't wait for you guys to see it. So another question that we get is why do they kind of wanted our opinion, why do we think that most people nowadays are going
Oh.
plant-based? And I think it was so fascinating that they asked this because we just did a post on social media, and Ashley, it's kind of funny. We'll send a link. I won't spoil it. But we got a lot of reactions, and so Ashley was kind of doing this, mass question of like, what's your top three reasons for going plant-based? And they were pretty consistent. So there was probably three main reasons. Number one, I think, and I haven't tallied it exactly, was health reasons. So
Yeah.
better digestion, more longevity, prevent or reverse chronic disease. They feel better, they have more energy. The list goes on and on. So health, I think, is number one. Number two was for animal activism, so to prevent as much cruelty and killing as possible. So I wasn't surprised, but I was kind of, because it was just interesting to see kind of a cross section of our audience, and so we talked so much about kind of the health aspects, and so I was kind of proud that people have so many. They're very passionate about animal rights and taking care of our furry friends.
Yes.
Um, and then number three for sure was environmental reasons. So trying to limit our carbon footprint as much as possible, limiting our plastic, that kind of thing. So I think those were the big three that I noticed. There was one other one that I wanted to mention that was really important, and that was to annoy their elderly relatives, which I thought was hilarious. Sass points.
Yep, yeah, that was great. It was amazing reading through those comments. It was so cool to see everyone's answers, and then I loved the sass.
There was lots of sass, so we'll link that so you guys can go watch it. It's
Yeah.
we got a lot of responses, so it was really interesting to see.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
great. Our Instagram community is just phenomenal. So
Oh,
if you're part of
so
it,
good,
we appreciate you. Oh. All
so
right, last
good.
one.
Last one, and I thought this was really interesting. So it kind of goes like they kind of wanted, this person really wanted to kind of understand our audience. So why or what do we think drives most people's food choices? Meaning, like when you're like literally in the moment, either at the grocery store, at the refrigerator, or like meal planning, what is driving you to make those decisions? Which was like a real thinker.
Yeah. Yeah, for you listening, if you're driving, walking at the grocery store, meal prepping, I know a lot of people do different things while they're listening. It's a good question to reflect on. And we had mentioned on the podcast, maybe this is where this is coming from I don't know if it was a few weeks ago, it's probably a while ago now, about how the ultimate goal with your food choices is to choose foods that honor your health and honor your taste buds. So marrying the two of those. And that's really an intuitive eating principle, is really trying to choose foods that make you feel good, honor your body, are nutrient dense, but then also taste really good. Because if you have one without the other, then that's where things can get a little tricky. So when I was reflecting on this question personally, I was thinking of those two things because that's always what pops into my head. But I will say affordability is a big one. Like, I'm definitely one to just double check prices. And then I would say convenience a little bit every once in a while is one. I mean, we do meal prep every single week, so there isn't a whole lot of convenience there. But I will say I do like to buy like there are these gluten free, vegan rice and bean burritos that you can get in the freezer section. And I do like having those on hand just every once in a while if I'm not feeling my meal prep or I need a little extra something during the day. It's something that I can heat up really easily and have as a snack or a tiny meal.
Yeah. And that's so funny because Ashley and I are a little bit different. So like definitely budget drives, at least for me, budget drives, probably that's number one. And then, convenience because I'm always on the go and I capitalize, hate cooking. And that's no matter what. Plant-based, standard American diet. I'm just like, oh, I wish I could be doing anything else but this. But it's gotten so much easier over the years, and some of the recipes in the meal plan are my go-tos because I don't the need to think about it. They're so easy, they're so convenient, they're so quick, and they're so darn delicious. Just like PB and chia seeds, PB&J, I will just shout it till my death, Ashley. But it's like, it's like 4 or 5 ingredients, like 2 steps. And I can do it literally blindfolded with one hand tied behind my back. And so for me, I'm just not one of those people that like gets enjoyment out of cooking. And so, for me, that is what drives me. Now, taste, that may be number one for a lot of people. And so I love that you mentioned that kind of sharing that harmony, Ashley, because kind of going back to the way I was eating before, mac and cheese, that was my jam, right? And so that definitely fit the taste part because I loved it how it would go down. Going down was A plus. But did I feel good afterward? Absolutely not. There was no healthful, joyous anything happening 30 minutes after I ate. So, I think that's a good rule of thumb to try to, marry that balance is like, okay, am I getting it for both of those reasons?
Yep. Yeah. No, I think that's really fantastic. I remember the mac and cheese, Katie, from way back when.
Yeah. So. I was keeping craft and business back then, baby.
Yep. And obviously there are other factors that drive food choices like access, availability, even cultural familiarity. That's one.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of different ways out there, but I would challenge you to kind of reflect on what drives your personal food choices. For those of you who are at the grocery store, you can think about it right now as you're shopping for food. So it's always something good to keep in mind because it kind of just, again, helps you dig deeper into why you choose the foods that you do.
Yeah. And you can just question it. I don't really think there's a right or wrong answer.
Yeah.
No. I think it just kind of opens the door to kind of question like, why I make the decisions that I do. And is there anything that I can, maybe tweak to make my life easier or, align with my goals better. So I think it's, Ashley and I are always questioning.
Yes, we are. Katie, I love doing these podcasts with you. I feel like we need to do more of them.
We said we were going to do a short one, guys. We've been recording for 50 minutes.
I know. We're like, okay, we'll just keep this about 20 minutes. No, never. Not with the two of us.
Oh,
so,
Lord.
Again, we appreciate you so much. Thank you so much for tuning in today. Again, our new 1-month meal plan is down below, so you can check that out. We are just excited for you to check it out and give us feedback if you would like to. If you want to buy it, that would be great too.
Yeah, we'd love to hear from you. So please leave us a comment, question, feedback. Happy anniversaries. We'd love that. Mitch said I had a goofy laugh, so tell Ashley something goofy about her. I don't feel so left out, or so she doesn't feel left out.
I did feel left out, so.
No, I'm pretty sure he gushed on you for about 2 minutes and then threw me a bone.
Aw, he was so great. Oh my goodness.
We love you, Mitch. We hope you're having fun meal prepping right now.
All right, y'all. Thanks again for tuning in. We'll catch you on the next episode. Katie, I'll check it later.
Bye.
Until next time, keep thriving.